video you are about to watch is a police interview conducted shortly after a missing person was officially reported. The contents of this video were exclusively shared with the Decoder by the Crow Wing County Sheriff's Office. Viewer discretion is advised.
Does he have any reason to
just disappear?
I don't know, make it look like he's disappeared?
I don't think so. I mean, he was very, possessive.
It began like any other missing persons case.
On Friday, the Crow Wing County Sheriff's Office says they received a missing person report for 23-year-old Bryce Brogle. Brogle was last seen leaving a home in Center Township on Wednesday.
But this was no ordinary disappearance. Bryce was last seen on October 26, 2022, in a small rural Minnesota town. His girlfriend, Cordelia LaFlex, made the frantic call to authorities 2 days later. She told them Bryce had been heading to a storage unit with her father. That was the last anyone heard from him.
And then you left here.
We left here.
And where did this interaction happen?
It happened just right out here. We got out, got this down, started to get up to speed, and the lights came on, and it happened right down here.
But there was lights on them?
Yeah, it was the ones that come up front. I didn't see anything up top, but there was the ones that came on there, and then the car looked, it was kind of a dark gray, and it kind of looked like the new Taurus.
Okay.
But I'm not 100. Like I said, it came by like that and pulled in front of the vehicles, and they put him in the back seat. The other one up, the officer, walked around, got in the car, passenger seat, and they left.
As investigators dug deeper, they would discover a series of unsettling text messages from Cordelia to Bryce on the night he went missing. Messages filled with concern, confusion, and fear. "I love you. Miss you already. You planning on coming back for me? Please." But Bryce never responded. And the deeper this investigation went, the more twisted it became. A case of a missing 23-year-old turning into something far darker than the detectives could have imagined. A storage unit, a sled, and a haunting discovery in the woods. Let's dive into the chilling story of Bryce Brogle's disappearance. It was October 26, 2022, when Cordelia's longtime boyfriend disappeared into thin air. It was a cold day in Center Township, with temperatures hovering just above freezing for most of the day. This lakeside region was sparsely populated and littered with resorts designed for urbanites to escape into nature. Now, with temperatures dropping, the tourists had gone home, and Cordelia, who lived in the same town as her father and her boyfriend and had just come home from a months-long trip, waited for Bryce to come home. He'd gone to a nearby storage complex with her father to drop off some of his belongings. Cordelia had been dating Bryce for 8 months, since February 2022, and they'd got back into town just that afternoon following a trip across the country. Bryce was familiar enough with her father, Michael, that they went off to the facility on their own. Cordelia stayed home and showered and texted Michael again, getting impatient. There was no ostensible reason a trip to the storage facility should take so long. The LaFlex house was only a third of a mile away from the facility, barely 10 minutes walking distance. Eventually, her father came home alone. He told her that Bryce had been arrested when they were at the storage complex. Some official-seeming men in 2 unmarked vehicles had shown up and taken him away in handcuffs. According to Michael, they had not shown any identification, and he had no explanation for it, what agency they might have come from, or what the charge might have been. This was Cordelia's father, and she had no reason not to believe his account. She texted Bryce again, "Baby," and waited for him to call her or text her back to explain what had happened. But he never did. So, on Friday, October 28th, with no more information, she went to the Crow County Sheriff's Office and filed a missing persons report. She had no more information to give the police than Michael had told her, and so Michael LaFlex was the first stop in their investigation. They tracked Michael down at a family Halloween party in Brainerd, and he took them to the storage facility where they interviewed him.
I figured when she had said, she goes, Dad, I'm going to go file a missing person report. And I was the last one seen with him.
Yep.
And I said, okay. And so I figured sometime, if not today, tomorrow, you guys will be talking with me. So.
Michael was cooperative with their questioning.
If we could just start again with what happened.
So we came here, we unloaded, we pulled out.
And you're driving this
the white Escape with a U-Haul trailer.
So you guys, you drove right up here from the house.
Yes.
Unloaded. Well, how long did that take?
Oh, 45 minutes maybe. Maybe. Because he was looking at stuff and trying to figure out if he was going to keep something or take something.
Michael explained that they'd gone to the storage unit to sort through Bryce's belongings after his long trip away with Cordelia. It had taken a while as Bryce decided what he wanted to keep or get rid of. So after heading to the storage unit around 5 p.m., Michael said they were done there at about 5:45. It was as they were leaving that things took a turn.
It happened just right out here. We got out, got this down, started to get up to speed, and the lights came on.
According to Michael, he and Bryce had been intercepted in the car, Michael's white Ford Escape, on their way out of the storage facility. These strangers had lights on their vehicles, though not the traditional overhead siren lights, instead the kind used on unmarked police cars. They took both Michael and Bryce into custody.
Which vehicle did you end up in?
The white one.
The white.
The white Ford Escape.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then Bryce ended up in which one?
The dark gray, whatever it was.
He was driving the white Escape.
Yeah. Yes.
So which vehicle did you end up?
Oh, the SUV.
Okay. And Bryce was put in which one?
The gray car.
And was there a cage in this car?
Not in the one I was in. It looked from the inside. It was plain Jane. It had a small in the center on the center console. It had a small. Looked like computer or something, but it was folded down.
Michael said that the two of them were separated. If this was an official arrest, it was a serious operation with multiple officers involved.
Did he say anything to you when Bryce?
No, he didn't. I mean, when we left here, he said thank you for your help, and that was it.
Did you guys have any other conversation?
No, I mean, I asked him on the way up here how the drive was. He said nice, decent. It really, I didn't care to talk with him.
There were hints of strife within the family, that Michael didn't particularly want to spend time with Bryce. Why then had Michael offered to take Bryce to the storage unit without his daughter?
Did Cordelia not want to come with, or what was the deal? How come she could come with?
Said she was smelly and stuff and needed to shower.
Okay.
From Michael's perspective, this was an ordinary outing to the storage facility, hijacked by whatever trouble Bryce had got himself into. Bryce and Cordelia had returned from their trip across the U.S. just that afternoon, and he thought it could be related to that.
Did you know she was coming back?
She called me. She called me Sunday and said, Dad, I'm going to be back in a week or so. And I was like, oh, sweet. I said, what's going on? She said, well, things just fell apart over here. And then that was Sunday during the day, and then Monday, she called me, and she said, Dad, we're coming home tonight. And I said, what? She said, yeah, we're leaving tonight. This thing's turned really bad, and we gotta go.
From the sounds of things, Cordelia and Bryce had got themselves mixed up in something more than they could handle, possibly something criminal.
After this went down, I went back, because I thought she was going to be taken too. I figured when I got back to the house, she was going to be gone.
So you're thinking there's just something bad that they got into out there?
Out in Washington, or I did hear the two, when the guy was taking cuffs out of me, he did say Arizona. He did say Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
Together, Cordelia and Bryce had traveled across the country to Arizona and Washington State. They'd left the day after Cordelia's graduation party in June and spent 4 months away from home together. 4 months in which anything could have happened. And Michael clearly believed that something had.
So when I got home, I said, what the hell happened? I said, what's going on? I said something. I said, Bryce has been arrested. I said, and they were saying Arizona. And she's like, Dad, nothing. Well, then I did get out of her that the cops were called a couple times, but it was because she went to work with bruises on her face.
Nothing came of these interactions with the cops, apparently. For Michael, however, this was a recurring problem, and perhaps the root of his dislike of Bryce.
Last spring, when he came to stay with us in March and stayed with him, there was a lot of verbal abuse towards Cordelia. There was a time where she came down with a big bruise on her face, which she said that was wrestling. My other daughter said it could be that. It was not, and then heard her crying. So there's always been the fighting and him being that way.
Michael claimed that Bryce was a heavy pot smoker and that both he and Cordelia had 2 phones, one ordinary and one flip phone that could be easily disposed of. Locating Bryce's phone was obviously a matter of urgency for the investigators, but Michael said he didn't know where they were. And as the interview progressed and the sky grew dark, he gave more details he said Cordelia had told him.
She said
That Bryce said on the way back that he had a feeling that somebody was going to get arrested when he got back here. She said the FBI.
But the investigators were aware of the possibility that Bryce's disappearance could be related to something else. They considered that maybe it could have been staged.
Does he have any reason to
Just disappeared?
or make it look like he's disappeared?
I don't think so. I don't think, no. I mean, she said they were going to be going back to Montana to work. And that they were, I mean, he was very, what's the word, possessive. All her phones, or all her emails and everything went through his phone so he could watch who she was talking to. I think her Facebook, everything went through his phone so he could screen everything.
The investigators asked to look at Michael's phone so they could examine its location data and confirm where he'd been on Wednesday evening as the last person to see Bryce.
You know, I got home, we ran to Brainerd, I actually went and talked to my uncle.
But Michael's wires were getting crossed. Only about 10 minutes after Michael had denied having Bryce's phone, the investigators asked him about it again.
And you've never had his phone, you weren't in possession of it today?
It was in the vehicle.
Okay.
I took it. I did take it. And I just wanted my daughter to get away from him.
He said he'd thrown it into the trash at a gas station in Brainerd that evening. His reason for this highly suspicious behavior? He wanted to protect his daughter.
I was scared, to tell you the truth. I was scared of the whole situation. And I wasn't sure. I was afraid, honestly, of somebody tracking it and coming after my daughter.
A contradictory picture was emerging. On the one hand, there was the terrifying story of a couple pursued by law enforcement, Bonnie and Clyde style, all the way across the country. On the other, there was Michael's obvious dislike and suspicion of his daughter's boyfriend. To understand this complicated situation, we'll need to dive into what we know about Bryce and Cordelia's relationship and the LaFlex family dynamic. Bryce Brogle was born in Brainerd in September 1999. He just recently turned 23 while on his cross-country trip with Cordelia. And this was a trip that represented everything he loved, which was exploring out west and living an independent, back-to-basics life. His dream was to build a yurt in Alaska and create a self-sufficient farm. He and Cordelia met in February 2022 and bonded over their love of dogs and their similar goals of adventuring. Younger than Bryce, she graduated in June 2022, and that's when they took off across the country. Part of her drive to travel was an overbearing home life. She considered her parents to be helicopter parents who had boundary issues. Once, according to Cordelia, her parents had hired a private investigator to follow one of her previous boyfriends. Her mother had Huntington's disease, and her younger sibling, of whom she was very supportive, was transgender. Both of these things factored into a tense family environment at times, but according to Cordelia, it was her father, Michael, who was the most stressful presence in the house, though he seemed to be devoted to his family. He even had a tattoo that read "Daddy's Little Girls" with a stylized illustration of them with him in silhouette. Born in 1977, Michael was 45 and had grown up in Pequot Lakes, Minnesota, a suburb of Brainerd. His parents were divorced and his mother had remarried, having more children in the new relationship, which left Michael with younger half-siblings. He graduated from Pequot Lakes High School in 1996 and moved up into Center Township soon after that. He'd worked construction in the past and was now self-employed, working a variety of odd jobs in the neighborhood. This was not Michael's first run-in with the law. Early in 1999, at the age of 21, he pleaded guilty to criminal sexual conduct in the third degree and was sentenced to 5 years probation. In 2018, he pleaded guilty to another sex offense, this time fourth-degree criminal misconduct with an adult considered developmentally disabled and mentally impaired. Records suggest that initially this person refused to have sex with him, but eventually agreed when he insisted. As a result, he'd taken a polygraph test in the past. In fact, he'd taken 4.
One of the things, I don't know that we're at that point in this investigation, is a polygraph test.
Yeah.
Okay? In Minnesota, polygraph tests can't be used against you. So if you take it and you fail, it's not like we can say, you failed.
Yeah.
Okay? But if you take it and you pass, it's just one more thing and we're like, all right, just put it.
Yeah.
So that's a tool that's out there. We have it available to us. It would be, I would explain the whole test to you.
I've taken them before.
Okay.
Yeah, actually past 4 you had to take them.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you understand how they work.
Yeah.
But that was a very different type of crime from the one that might have been committed here. Bryce Brogle had been missing for 2 days, and Michael's story was suspicious. And he even told them he'd threatened Bryce before.
I just said, if I ever see another bruise on her, I said I won't be having words with you.
But he seemed to anticipate this line of questioning.
Doing something to him wouldn't change my daughter in that way. She's got to come to the conclusion that I don't want this anymore if she's being abused. And as much as it hurts and hard, I got to let her make that decision. I mean, I can't,
Sometimes it's not even doing so. I have daughters myself, and I just a little bit you told me.
Yeah.
I can tell this is torn you off.
Yeah.
Her being away with him, him controlling her. You never know when you're going to see her or hear from her again.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what I would do.
Yeah. No,
and it might be just something as far as I'm going to scare the living shit out of this kid and keep him away from my daughter.
Talking to the investigators outside the storage unit, he always used the past tense to refer to Bryce.
He wouldn't stop. He's the type that he thinks he's overly smart. He always bragged about when he took tests, he scored off the charts. And I just told him that usually people that talk like that are dumb. But that was what he was. And I've I'm in counseling. And talked to her, and it's the same thing. I realized that I've got to let her do it. Oh, I thought you were with my phone. I was okay.
No, my phone.
So, yeah.
Well, like I say, I'm a dad.
No, yeah.
I understand. I mean, from what you're describing.
Yeah. I have another daughter to watch out for and take care of. And I'm not going to put that in jeopardy. I'm not going to put going to prison in jeopardy. Being away from my family, my girls.
Yep.
And that's not worth it. And again, it'd mean more to me to see my daughter say, I don't want you anymore. I want to be done with you because you hurt me. And then if he won't leave her alone, do it through the proper channels of restraining order. Or if he's beating her, go through the proper channels and get him arrested. That's how I want to beat him. I want to beat him with this versus these, or have somebody else beat him. I'm not. So.
Well, at this point in time, I hope you feel like we're just doing our job.
Yeah.
And we hope that you would be able to tell us whatever you want.
I have told you everything that I know and do, and
Is there any surprises when we get more of the phone data back from your phone, his phone?
shouldn't be.
Shouldn't be is usually an answer that tells me that there's something.
There's nothing from my phone. I mean, I'm all over the place. I mean, I don't.
His. When you had it, were there people
No,
calling? Did you answer a phone?
No,
call?
I didn't answer anything. Actually shut it off. You know,
When did it get turned back on?
I never did.
It's been on.
Then I never
It
did.
doesn't go through your voicemail.
Because I never turned it on. Maybe I didn't shut it off. No, there shouldn't be anything. I mean, I'm all over the countryside, here and there and everywhere. So I'm in the woods, deer hunting, or
At the end of this interview, the investigators checked and could find no record of an outstanding warrant for Bryce Brogle's arrest, or that he'd ever been taken into custody. They also searched for both of his cell phones at the gas station in Brainerd, and they found them in a garbage can, where Michael had said he'd disposed of them.
Who's that by the truck right now? Is that Mike that's at the back of the truck?
Yeah, looks like he's putting ice in the back.
Did he stop in the store and buy ice, I'm assuming then?
Yeah, I think that's what he bought. That's what bag size looked about right.
When they examined the data on Michael's own phone, they found that he'd left home at 4:45 a.m. on October 27th, the day after Bryce went missing, and went back to his storage unit. He stayed there for 22 minutes before heading to a spot of public land by Lake Edward, staying there for an hour. It was becoming increasingly clear that the storage unit was the scene of a crime. On October 29th, the police executed a search warrant on it. On the unit's concrete floor, they found a bottle of bleach that held traces of both Bryce and Michael's DNA, the remains of a substance that tested positive for blood, and marks consistent with something heavy being dragged on a sled. And on October 30th, they followed the evidence of Michael's cell phone location data to the spot near Lake Edward. In the middle of the woods, it was far from civilization, not a place that could easily be stumbled upon.
So it's a sandy, previously dug area that they broke off branches and stuck them in the ground.
Fresh leaves on top.
And then fresh leaves on top. But it's,
This is probably animals.
We kind of dug down with their boots about 6-8 inches and don't see anything, but this is probably, it's really odd.
The leaves on top of this freshly dug site didn't match the surrounding fallen leaves, as if someone had made an attempt to disguise the area. But they hadn't disguised it well enough. When an excavation team arrived, the grave was dug up and they found a body. It was the body of Bryce Brogle, and he'd been shot in the back of the head. Michael LaFlex was undeniably implicated in this murder now that the body had been discovered. But this wasn't a surprise to law enforcement, because 2 days earlier, his two half-siblings had gone to the police to tell them that Michael had confessed. When Michael got back from speaking with the investigators at the storage unit on October 28th, he talked to his sister, Jen Baker, whose party he'd been at earlier that evening. He asked to borrow her car, as he said he was concerned the police would follow his truck. When she asked him why, he told her he needed to bury Bryce's body. He confessed to shooting Bryce in the back of the head. He told her not to worry because they'd never find the body. He told her he'd used a sled to move it as it was too heavy to move by hand, and he took a bag of leaves she had by the garage to cover it up once he'd buried it. This sled was later found in a ditch on the way to the storage unit, covered with a blanket. It had a dried red-brown substance on it. When Michael was gone, Jen called her brother, Michael's half-brother, Patrick, and told him what Michael had told her. Patrick was a night shift clerk in Pequot Lakes, and the local police interacted with him often. He had a bond of trust with them, and so when Jen told him this chilling revelation, he went to the police, asking that he remain anonymous. It was common knowledge in their family, apparently, that Michael believed Bryce was abusing Cordelia. But everything he'd said to the investigators, that Cordelia needed to make her own choices and could only realize that Bryce was toxic on her own, had been a lie. Michael was arrested for the killing. In November 2022, he was arraigned on a charge of second-degree murder without premeditation. He had shot Bryce in the back of the head from a distance in the storage unit, and then moved his body on a sled to the spot in the woods after cleaning the storage unit. He buried the body and ineffectually covered up the dig site. But as the investigation moved forward, another witness emerged: Bryce and Cordelia's landlord in Washington State. The landlord said that Michael had called him and asked if Bryce had hurt his daughter. When the landlord told him that he'd seen Cordelia with 2 black eyes, Michael said that he was going to kill Bryce and that he'd already had the hole dug. When pressed, Michael's half-brother corroborated this. Michael had told him the same thing. This aligned with other details of the case. Michael stored his firearms at his half-sister Jen's house. On October 26th, just hours before Cordelia and Bryce arrived back home in Minnesota, Michael had collected one of his guns, saying he needed it to kill a rodent at a job site where he was working. This hadn't been a killing in the heat of the moment. This had been a cold-blooded, premeditated murder. On March 30th, 2023, the prosecutors upgraded the charge, and Michael was indicted by a grand jury on charges of first-degree murder. His trial took place a year later, in 2024. Michael took the stand and maintained that Bryce had been abusive, remembering times he'd seen Cordelia with bruises that she'd denied or explained away. He said that in July 2022, a month into her trip with Bryce, she texted her father to come get her. She never shared her location, and a few days later she said everything was fine. And this was the line she held during the trial. She maintained that her relationship with Bryce was never physically violent and that she had been happy with him. Her Facebook posts reflected this. On October 31st, when her father had already been arrested for the killing, she wrote, "A very special person was taken from me, but I know now that he will never leave. He's my guardian angel forever. I love you so much, Bryce." She continued to reminisce about him on her public social media as her father was indicted, and she never supported his claims. In his testimony, Michael admitted killing Bryce. However, he denied it had been premeditated. He said he'd brought Bryce out to the storage unit to provoke him into a fight so that he could press charges and then keep Bryce away from his daughter. He said he just happened to have the gun with him after dealing with vermin at a client's house earlier that day. He claimed he confronted Bryce about his treatment of Cordelia and that Bryce said, "She is mine and she is my business," and that he would kill her before ever giving her up. This, Michael said, was when he shot Bryce, in the heat of the moment, to protect his daughter. However, the jury did not agree with him. In April 2024, they found him guilty on 1 count of first-degree premeditated murder and a lesser count of second-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole. Cordelia continues to memorialize Bryce on Facebook, writing in March 2024 about Bryce and another person she'd lost, "I think about you and Bryce all the time." What do you think about this tragic story? Was the killing really premeditated? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay safe, keep up with our channel, and we will see you very soon on The Decoder.